and welcome to another day on Cornwall Pocket Farm, where I try and figure out how to live sustainably on 300 square metres in the city. Today I'm going to answer a question that I get asked all of the time. As soon as I tell somebody that, I try and live sustainably or sustainably as possible, they always say, "Oh, do you have solar panels?" Sort of like the proof that you're serious about being sustainable. And if you don't have solar panels, then really you're just sort of messing around, and if you were properly sustainable, you'd have solar panels. People have different circumstances, so for other people it might make a lot of sense, but for us it doesn't. And I just thought I'd explain why it doesn't make sense for us. I thought I'd try and film this outside today because we're talking about solar energy, and I thought I'd be outside in the sun. It didn't seem right to be in the studio, so there may be a bit of background noise. Anyway, let's have a little chat about why I don't have solar panels. So I suppose the basic thing is that we don't use much electricity in our house. Obviously we don't have any fossil fuel energy in our house, but we don't use much electricity. In a home there are two big users of electricity essentially. They're both heating. One of them is heating your house, room heating, and then the other one is actually heating your hot water. So in our house we have a lot of insulation, and we also have thermal mass that holds on to that heat, so it doesn't take much heat in our house to keep it at a very nice temperature. I'll pop a link to a video where I explain about how and why we bought this house, and that we'll talk a little bit more about the renovation and the installation and things like that. I also have a full renovation playlist if you're interested in what the house looked like in the very beginning and all the stages that we went through to make this house. Check out that playlist. Again, I'll put a link up here. So we have a very, very energy efficient house. It's very warm with the insulation and the thermal mass. For our hot water, we have heat pump hot water. So a heat pump is used to heat our hot water, which is very efficient, doesn't use much electricity. The other component of the hot water is that we have low flow fittings for all of our plumbing, which means that we don't actually use that much hot water anyway, and the hot water is very efficiently heated by the heat pump. We don't have solar panels, so we don't directly use the sun's energy to create our electricity, but we do use solar energy quite extensively. We use the sun to grow our food. These huge leaves are basically capturing the energy from the sun and turning it into food, which is energy for us. So the whole garden runs on sun. We use the sun for drying our washing. It's wonderful using wind and solar energy to dry your washing outside instead of putting it in a dryer. We don't own a dryer, we just use the sun. We use the sun to adjust the temperature in our house. We have a pergola that runs all the way along the front of the house and outside our seating area just outside the kitchen, and it has a grate on it. In the summer it is covered in leaves and shades the house, allowing no sunlight into the house, therefore keeping the house cool. But in the winter all the leaves drop and we prune it, and then all of the sun can stream into the house and warm our home, and that is our main energy source for heating our home. Having a closer look at our energy costs, if you like, our electricity bill is quite small. Generally it's around $100 a month. So at the moment when we're in summer it's below $100, and then when we get into the winter it goes a little bit above $100, but basically it floats around $100. And a large portion of that, the majority of that bill, is actually our line charges. Essentially the price that is charged for them to actually run electricity to our house. The electricity usage that varies every month on top of that is just a small portion of our bill. Now of course if we put solar panels on our roof we would have energy savings, but those savings would only really affect that smaller portion of our bill, which is the amount of energy we use. It would not affect our line charges unless we went off-grid. If we went off-grid, essentially we would need to have batteries, because of course when you're looking at solar panels, having solar panels, The solar panels are one piece of it, and you can have solar panels if you feed the extra electricity into the grid, say. But if you want to be completely self-sufficient in electricity, you need to have batteries to store your energy in so that then you can use it in the night. Because of course, you know, you're making no electricity in the night, because it'll come as no surprise to anybody, but the sun doesn't shine at night. So you're not making electricity through the night. You need to get electricity from a stored reserve. So you'd need batteries, and so that's an extra cost, and batteries are a lot more money than actually just solar panels are. So you'd have to buy the solar panels and batteries to go off grid. Obviously, if you're out in the countryside, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and it's going to cost you a lot of money to get your lines, your electricity lines up to your property, then going solar makes total sense. But for us, we're in the middle of suburbs, the electricity is already piped to our home anyway. I can't see that it makes that much sense to go off grid. So let's say we don't have batteries and we just have solar panels, and we feed any excess into the grid, because we've got a really good span of roof all facing north, or it's actually sloping a little bit away, but they put them up onto brackets so it would, to get the perfect angle. So we could have a really big long array all the way across the top of our roof. But unfortunately, they don't pay very much for energy that you give them. Obviously, they charge quite a lot to sell you the energy, but when you sell it back to them, they don't pay very much. So I think the average now in New Zealand is about 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's really not very much at all. The other component to this calculation is insects. A buzzy thing. The other component to this calculation, of course, is that we would have to borrow money to afford the solar panels and potentially the batteries. And when you borrow money, obviously, there is then interest to be paid on that. So when you look at all those financial considerations, the fact that a very small portion of our electricity bill is actually our electricity usage, of that we would probably only replace a small fraction of that with solar, the energy from the solar panels. We may well be able to sell some electricity back to the grid, but they don't pay very much, and we would have to borrow money and pay interest on the money that we've borrowed. So when you add all of that up, it would take us a very, very long time to pay back the cost of the solar panels and potentially batteries if we went with batteries as well. The next thing to think about, of course, is that solar panels and batteries, they are all products. They are products that have a certain lifespan, after which they are, the technology's moved on and they're outdated, they have broken through use, they have been worn by the weather. Whatever it is, it's a product that is going to fail. So it only has a certain lifespan. And we probably, well, when we did the calculations, we couldn't pay back the cost of them before they would be redundant and dead. So it doesn't make any sense at all. The other thing to think of when you've got products is all of those materials have to be mined out of the ground. There's a cost to the production of those items, the creation of the actual solar panels, the transport of those solar panels, the installation, all of those things all have an environmental impact. And then at the end of the life of those products, you've then got to either recycle them, which takes energy to do. You need to put in energy to recycle stuff. Or it becomes waste, and then you have polluted the environment with some more junk, which we really, really don't need to do. The other thing to mention, of course, is that New Zealand's electricity grid is primarily renewable resource anyway. Most of our electricity comes from hydro, geothermal, wind, renewable resources anyway. We don't make the majority of our electricity from fossil fuels, because as a country we don't have much in the way of fossil fuels, but what we do have is wind and lakes and geothermal. So actually that's how our electricity is made. So it's a renewable resource anyway, so why would I do solar panels to make my own renewable resource? And also remembering that solar panels need maintenance. to efficiently collect the sun's energy using solar panels, you do actually need to keep them clean. So we would need to be able to, get onto the roof and wipe them down, probably yearly. I'm not sure what the recommendations are. And if it's not something that you'd want to do yourself, you've then got the extra cost of paying somebody to climb onto your roof and wash off your solar panels, maybe annually. What I'm talking about here is that solar panels don't make sense for us in our particular circumstance. However, if you lived in a country where your electricity was generated through fossil fuels, dirty coal, those types of things, then obviously renewable energy is a much better idea. Or for instance, if the country in which you lived in paid more for the electricity that you put into the grid, that would make a difference too. If, for instance, you happen to be lucky enough to have piles of money sitting around in the bank, you might find that putting solar panels on your roof is a really good use of that money to actually reduce your energy bills. If you had really high energy bills, well look, if you've got really high energy bills, put in a bunch of insulation, put in some energy efficient fittings, get a heat pump for your hot water. The key thing that we need to do here is to use less energy. Overarching, you can talk solar panels, you can talk grid, you can talk anything you like in the world. We need to use less. So the first thing you can possibly do is insulate and figure out ways to use less energy. After that, you can then think about how that energy is produced, essentially. I'm sure there are lots of other circumstances that I haven't thought of where solar power would make a lot of sense for you. But for us, when we crunched the numbers, when we thought about all the impacts and all the factors that you need to take into account, it doesn't make sense. And as I say, we have pre-wired for solar in the house. Costs next to nothing just to do that, run a couple of extra cables while we had the jib off the walls and everything. That was easily done. It means that if we ever did do solar panels, essentially the wire is just underneath the flap of the iron on the roof, and it would be easy to pop the solar panels on and connect it all up to the systems that would be put into the pantry. But for now, it doesn't make sense. So I thought I would just answer that question, because when somebody makes that comment on my video or says, oh, well, of course you have solar panels there, I could direct them to this video. So don't get me wrong, I think solar panels are brilliant. I think all this renewable energy is amazing. We should push hard for it, because we really all need to get off the fossil fuels. At the moment, we're completely addicted to fossil fuels, and we need to get off those. We need to get off them fast. We need to use a lot less energy, and we also need to use renewable energy sources. My next video next week will probably be another in my capsule wardrobe series. I'm working hard on that jacket for suit A, but it's not quite there yet, and I need to get the waistband on as well. So a few more bits and pieces to do there before I can bring out that next video on the capsule wardrobe series. So I just thought I'd pop this in. There's not a lot going on in the garden at the moment. It's the middle of summer here. The garden is very dry. We've had a bit of rain the last couple of days, which has been great, but it's still a little bit too hot and dry to get those winter vegetables into the garden, and my summer crops are still producing. My pumpkins are drying off. The tomatoes have slowed down but are still pumping. The beans again are still pumping. So even though they're looking very messy, and I am itching to pull them out. I hate this time of year. I mean, it's great that we get lots of crops, but everything looks so messy, and I really want to pull it all out, tidy it all up, and get some nice, neat little seedlings in. But anyway, I'm sitting on my hands for now, because it's not the right time. If I put my little seedlings in the garden now, they wouldn't last very long. So that will happen. I am actually sowing seeds at the moment. I'm sowing brassicas ready for the garden. So yeah, the next video may be a capsule wardrobe series one, I think it might be, and then probably after that another garden video. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying this content, and please, if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe and like and comment, of course. Always interested in your opinions, your ideas. Please put anything below that I haven't thought about. We have done a lot of research and a lot of thinking, but I'm sure I've missed a few things. So do please comment below, because it's also very useful for other people when they read your comments. So that would be wonderful. Anyway, I will see you next time. Bye.